envelopes, the envelope was frozen, and that's how they knew how to get New York the top lottery pick. And one of the reporters said this on television the other day about how David could be really, really tough at the same time, put his arms around you and really, make you feel warm and fuzzy. But at the same time, you feared this guy because he was really sharp with his tongue and very sarcastic. And, he interviewed David, and he asked him, he said, hey, and David said, are you telling me that I committed a felony? And it was like as serious as a heartbeat. They put the reporter right where he needed to be. And Stern was not a heavy-handed guy, but he had the respect of everyone in the league. But the thing that he's best known for, without a doubt, is the globalization of the sport.
Right.
Taking it to the next level, where it's an international sport.
Yeah, no question about that. I mean, think about it. He brought in the Dream Team, and you know where that went. And now, of course, by being able to build it internationally, you also brought in a lot of the great international players. I don't think you have guys like Dirk Nowitzki coming in here. I know Giannis Antetokounmpo is a product of that situation. And, the list goes on. And without Stern, we don't see a lot of these foreign players making an impact on this sport.
Oh, yeah.
But let's not lose sight of the fact that Stern knew how to market his superstars. He knew that even though he took over in '84, that when Magic Johnson and Larry Bird came into the league after the '79 Final Four, he knew that he had to market that sport around these two guys. Michael comes along, and then of course you have Isaiah Thomas, the Bad Boys era. So you had different types of eras of basketball that helped build the sport simultaneously, and that to me is what makes what he did even better. Again, the word that I like to use, though, Bill, is tape delay. Think about it. I remember many years ago, I was working in a restaurant, the Highland House, out in Highland, Michigan. I would work on Friday nights and the NBA Finals games were on. Tape delay. I'm thinking, this is pretty good stuff. I get to watch it at home after work, where in retrospect, it wasn't doing the league any justice, you know what I mean? But again, that's the dire straits that the NBA was in back at the time, a league that practically went bankrupt anyways. And Stern took it to levels that were unimaginable. They really were.
He was a visionary. We could talk about the G League. We could also talk about the WNBA that, were started under his watch as well. So, like I said before, he was the smartest guy in the room. He was a visionary. And the NBA lost a true soldier, and a guy that has taken this league to unprecedented heights that maybe somebody else wouldn't have been able to do back in the day.
Yeah, I mean, so, Bill, in your estimation, how do you think Stern would handle all the drama that's going on? And then let me add to that about load management. Oh, goodness, I hate both of those. I really do.
Well, they would have. I think the first thing is that with the load management, they wouldn't have used that word, and it kind of, it was kind of around when Stern was the commissioner. They were, Popovich was doing that with the Spurs under his watch a little bit. Kind of let him know that he didn't like it. That's where you fear the commissioner. You're going to listen to him. The other thing is that I know this is going to sound a little crazy.
That's all right.
But remember Donald Sterling, the owner of the Clippers?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, what an abortion this guy was for the WNBA, and how with the NBA, and how difficult it was to get people to buy in with him. Well, it didn't become a big issue with Stern. Stern had a way of snuffing out any stories from mushrooming and becoming a problem or an albatross around the league's neck. And I think it has a lot to do with leadership as well. It just basically kind of squashed that. It didn't become a big issue. Back then, I thought this is something that could really hurt the league a lot. And he was able to put a clamp on that. So that had a lot to do with, him and his leadership. He's right up there with Pete Rozelle as well for what he was able to do, with the league and its expansion.
That's a great comparison when you talk about Pete Rozelle. I'm really glad that you brought that up, because Pete Rozelle rule with an iron hammer as well, and he didn't take any nonsense from anybody. And I think that when you put the perspective about David Stern, I like the way he dealt with Mark Cuban. Mark Cuban wrote a lot of checks, and Stern was more than happy to go ahead and collect them, but he let Mark Cuban know, this is my league, okay, and you're just one of the teams that are participating in this league, and he wasn't afraid to use that hammer when he needed it.
Yes, and that's what you want your commissioner to do.
So, we talk about Adam Silver, and we talk about Stern. Now that Stern is no longer there to help out Silver in terms of a mentorship or try for guidance, how do you think Adam Silver goes ahead and is affected by all of this now that he doesn't have a guy that can turn to for advice?
I think Adam will do a good job, and the reason for it, he worked with under Stern's tutelage for a long time, so he pretty much knows what to do. Got off to a rocky start in the beginning of the year with all the nonsense with China and all that. And the ratings are starting to come back a little bit. And so I'll just say it's a work in progress, but I think that, he'll do a decent job. He's a players commissioner. I just got to be careful they don't play him like a fiddle, and I don't think that'll happen. And I think that the NBA will continue to grow, and they'll get over some of the faux pas they had at the beginning of the year, and he'll do just fine.
All right, we'll end it on this note, Bill. I'm really curious to get your opinion on this. What are your thoughts about the probability? I think with this league, it's always probability about them shortening the season and having an in-season tournament. That to me is just, I have a problem with that.
So do most of the star players, because there's no motivation for them.
Right.
And I just think that that's something that is not going to happen.
Yeah, play 82 games and go from there. There's only so much tinkering you can do with this league, but at some point you have to leave the infrastructure of what you're doing alone and go by with what you have. I don't even think you can even readjust the seating. You just have to leave it alone. If there's one thing that irritates the living heck out of me about the NBA is that the playoffs drag on as long as they do, but then again, I don't think that'll ever change because TV dictating it, especially that network that you didn't particularly care about, ESPN. But I want you to, for this audience, talk about what your feelings are with ESPN, because you had a great line last night.
Well, there are times where we call ESPN the extra stupid programming network.
I needed to hear that.
One time, when you have been raised on ESPN, I remember they started out in Bristol with a satellite dish, and cable was first starting out. And now you have a younger breed that want to politicize and throw social issues in there. And as long as ESPN continues to do that, people are not going to follow it as much as they used to. And I love ESPN. I just think that they ought to cool it with some of the things that they do on there. They kind of voice their opinion on how to act like a person and all that. And just leave that out of the equation and be more sports-oriented, and they'll be fine. But remember we talked about before about that pendulum swinging all the way to the left.
Right.
And we don't need to talk about it anymore because I think our audience has been hit over the head with it. But, we just got to make sure that the pendulum stays in the middle and we get better balance out of ESPN, because there are times where some of the stuff they put out there and some of the commentary by the young broadcasters is a little ridiculous. All right, and so there's got to be some stability there with some of the things. And I will tell you, one of the things that I think has happened here is their ratings went down a lot. That's when they had massive layoffs. And a lot of the older people, like Chris Berman and everything else, they retired. And a lot of people that are on there for a long time who I really enjoyed listening to were laid off as well.
Right.
With major budget cuts. And I think that really hurt the network because it came across as no loyalty and, yada, yada, yada. But I think one of the things that ESPN did is that they kept Chris Berman back, where he does the Sunday, highlights, which is a big part of the show, because I just don't think that the young people on ESPN can carry the network like the Chris Bermans and the older people did.
Right.
They're going to make that transition, but they've got to be stable. All right, and these young people have to watch out and not be on Twitter all the time and doing social commentary and all this stuff, and stay away from the Colin Kaepernick type stuff and the money part of it, and just start reporting a little bit more about sports. And I think they'll be fine. I think Keith Olbermann is kind of carrying the ball for them right now. He's one of the older timers, been around, and some of the other people, Linda Cohen and those types of people. So they'll make the transition, but they got to be kind of careful right now because people get turned off very quickly these days because they watch sports to relax and they don't want to think things politicized. We've got enough of that stuff going on with social media and Fox and CNN. We don't need it in the sports world.
Yeah, there's only two shows that I really care about anyways, Bill. One of them is Golic and Wingo. I've always liked Mike Golic anyways, and I think Wingo's fine. And the other one is, pardon the interruption, with Mike Wilbon and Tony Kornheiser. Other than that, they can keep the rest of their program. I have no interest in it. I'm more concerned about building our programs, and that's it, Bill. So.
Yeah, that goes to what we were saying, Scott, is the older guys like Wilbon and Tony Kornheiser, I love those guys. In fact, I swear to God, Michael Wilbon and I were separated at birth. I joke, we almost all the time, he gets temperamental and volatile as I do sometimes because of some of the things that he sees out there. And those older guys are the linchpin for ESPN right now. I can't imagine, what's going to go on with ESPN after those two guys retire. And there's another thing, I'm not a chauvinist, but I'm watching these shows now with these older, like Dan Levitard, he's got his dad on there, and they've got these girls on there.
Right.
And the girls are good. Okay, I enjoy that a lot. But I think we've reached the diversity culture, when we want players that have played the game reporting on stuff, not, females that, are good reporters. And I think we're at the point now where they've got a good balance. But I think we got to be very careful moving forward. And I just like to see, that balance stay intact.
Well,
the way it is right now. But when we lose Kornheiser or Wilbon, those are guys that have been doing it for a long, long time. And I think the females we got in there do a really, really good job. But I'm wondering about what's coming up the ranks.
Well, ironically, Mike Golic is actually only 2 weeks older than I am, and he was born, I think, lived in Willowick, Ohio. And ironically, I lived on Willowick Drive in Southfield, Michigan. I'd like to meet Mike one day. It's pretty interesting. He's a guy I do really enjoy watching. And, the one guy that I really marveled, and I had the opportunity to meet him last June, Bill, was Bob Lee. Bob Lee is the pinnacle of professionalism. And when Bob and I had a quiet moment together, we took photos. I didn't have to tell him that there was a guy that was way too loud for my taste. And he gave me that look like he knew what I was talking about. And Bob, you don't have to tell me who I'm talking about because I already know what you're thinking. And I actually followed ESPN from its inception in 1979, and there's no question that a lot of those older guys are what define it. Yes, do you have versatility with the women? Yeah, are there some good ones there? Yeah, Hannah Storm's certainly one of the better ones. We'll talk about ESPN another day, but I think...
Mullen from the Boston Globe, she's excellent.
Oh, yeah. Oh, God, yeah. But Jackie's a true pro. And back years ago, Gail Gardner was fantastic. So maybe one of these days we'll create a show about some of our favorite ESPN people, but we won't do it tonight.
Scotty, I'd like to amend it a little bit. I don't think it's so much as a female or male thing as it is a longevity and experience issue.
Right. That's fine. That's fair.
If you're good, you're good. All right? That's just the way I look at it. Okay?
I like your comment about Keith Olbermann. I really do. They're trying to bring him back where you have a little bit of an older guy there. Of course, Dan Patrick and Olbermann, I used to watch them on SportsCenter many years ago. They were a very popular tandem then. And I'm actually going to be out in L.A. The next week, and I'm hoping to meet Charlie Steiner. He was a lot of fun, too. And I know they built a studio down in downtown L.A. But what I do in L.A., who knows what's going to happen. So, but...
Well, Scott, it's sort of like building a ball club, don't you think? You got to have your rookies.
Right.